Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday. It's January 22nd. This will be our chart lesson for today. And obviously, no trading yesterday. I forgot to mention that before I left on Friday. That Monday was holiday, and the market would not be trading a regular day. So uh, most of you probably figured that out. But anyway, we got a short week this week, so. We had a nice downtrend today. This was a little tricky early on. It looked like we were going to notice we got a leg down. We went flat, and then we got basically another leg down. There's really two legs down there. Then we corrected. And what you have to wait, you have to let this play out to make sure that this is not a reversal, that it's a correction. But notice how we got a break, and we tried to go higher and finally couldn't, and then turned down again. Now this two-tiered channel is a little different than I originally had it this morning. Originally, I had it like we always draw it off the high, and you can see it fitting down through there, and I had my midline right in here, and you can see that fits this really well here. But what happened was we got outside here and continued down, and really all I did was slide that line over and then found the midline on this. And we still had a two-tiered channel. It was just a little different than I originally had it drawn, and you can see that there. It takes experience to be able to do that, but a lot of times when you move forward, if you break outside and the trend continues, just try either try to find a new trend or move your trend line over. And another thing you probably could have done here, there's a flatter channel working across here like so, and you can see that. You can see it kind of working off the bottom. It's not real clear. This is probably down here is what we're going to have, and there's probably going to be a midline in there. Like so. So you might have looked at it like that right in there. That doesn't help you as much, but this trend line here does get some touches that you might have looked at. But you're really better off to go with your shorter term stuff in here and find the bigger pattern. And in my opinion, this was the bigger pattern as the day progressed. So, and you won't always have to do that, but sometimes the trend changes a little bit and gets a little tricky, and you just have to kind of look at it until you figure it out. The more you do this, the easier that gets. I mean, I really don't even have to put the trend lines on there. I do, especially the shorter term ones, because sometimes they'll trick you a little bit. But, I can glance at this chart because I've been doing this so long, and I could see these trend lines without ever drawing them. But I couldn't always do that. I had to draw them, and I'd look at it and maybe adjust them a little bit. And so until you get really good at this, you need to draw. And I'd recommend just drawing them all the time. I mean, I draw them for the most part, and I leave them on there so I don't have to put them back later in the day when I do the chart lesson if I'm trading or so forth. So I'm still not really trading yet, so I'm taking a trade here or there, but I'm not back to trading full time, and due to my eye situation, and not sure when I will. But anyway, let's talk about the trades, and we'll wrap today up. We started out down, and then we just were going sideways here, and there's not a lot of trades in there. You had to be really patient till around 9 o'clock, and then we started, the trades, the downtrend didn't really pick up till 10:30 area here, and then it picked on up rather nicely, actually. But early on, you just had to be patient here. There is a trade right after 7 o'clock this morning, around 7:25, 7:30 or so. We're in a downtrend here, and we're still making lower highs and lower lows. And notice you move up, you get a first entry, then you try to go higher again. So you get a nice second entry short there on a bearish bar. You tried to test this resistance area across here several times. Nice little scalp, and then we just kept going sideways, and it's really tight in here. I'd just stay out of this. There's not really an easy way to trade that. There is a lower high here with a relatively bearish bar, but it's a inside bar to a really bullish bar, so they're always, and we just came off the lows, so we may be heading back here. I was a little surprised when it turned down, so I don't think you want to go short there. You might have looked at that as a failed second entry long. Notice the new high, and then first entry, then second entry, and the fact that we pushed on through this support here and didn't bounce till down here. You might look at that as a failed second entry and say, hey, I'll go short there because of that. So if you saw it that way, it's a little bit aggressive though, still, for the reasons I talked. I'll mark it green for that reason. We actually get a little breakout pullback short here, but we didn't even break higher. We just found support. We tried 3 times there and got a relatively bearish bar. But you got to go short right into the lows of the day there. So I don't think that's, I think you're better off to, if anything here, you're probably better off to play this as a failed breakout, because even if it's going shorter, it's coming back most likely and test this again, and notice how it does. And there's a little bit of a failed break. Notice we get a break and push there, and we tried to go lower twice, but we didn't quite make a new low. If it would have broke lower there, I might have said, hey, you could risk this back to this, test this breakout area. But again, I think you're just better off to wait. And then notice how we come up here. You do get a second entry short here, but 2 really bullish bar. But now you finally make a lower high right here on a nice bearish bar. And that's the better place to enter. It takes it a minute, but it pushes on through. Then we're running down here, and you make a new low, and then first entry, you move up. Another second entry short. This would have been right at the original trend line the way I had it drawn earlier. So that's another reason I like that one. Quick, easy scalp, but then it bounces. And when it bounces off that trend line right there, I wouldn't take any more shorts. I don't know if I'd be looking for a long yet either. So you just kind of let this play out. You don't know if this is really going to be a just a correction, or if this is really a reversal here. And so you just kind of have to let it play out. It turns out it's just a correction. We finally get a break, and notice how we're trying to go back and make a retest and we can't. You get a double test here, but that bar is way too bullish on that second entry short. And then there's a failed second entry long here with a fairly bearish bar below, and we're making lower highs and lower lows. So you might, that's another one that you could probably argue to be green that I didn't mark. It was just really hard to know if the downtrend has started back yet. We got a fairly nice little trend working up, and we got a break, but we never made a new high. And notice how it does try to go back and make a new high. There's another little short trap here, and there is room to get out. Notice there's a double bottom, so first entry, second entry, and it broke lower and turned and went up the other side. So that's another one that you might take to the long side. I'm not going to mark it because it's all downhill here, and it's just too risky that it runs up here and a few ticks and turns back down. But notice how we tried to go higher once and then twice. And that's really a failed second entry long, but it actually went higher here and turned and went out the other side before it actually broke lower. So it really wasn't a failure until it broke right there, and you already had this bar with that little trap. And so that was the better entry right there. I like going short right there. And that did confirm that new trend line. This thing just takes off. You would have got a runner here, and we get a break. Unfortunately, you don't get you're just kind of going sideways here, and you don't really get a chance to get back in. It does break higher here finally, but you've already got 2 measured legs down. You're way away from the EMA, and as you can see, it's not long before it bounces. There's another second entry short when it breaks lower right here. Let me draw this little trend line here. I don't have it on there, but you can see it running up. Then we close outside, move to a new high, and there is a second entry short right there. It's a little bit lower high than this bar here, so it's really not your signal bar. You could have considered that one. Then it breaks higher right here. This would have been the better place to enter, but now you got 1, 2, 3, 4 bars kind of stacking up. This one you could probably argue for to at least be green. But you had these two legs down, and you had to just be real careful here. But when it tried to go higher a third time and failed, there's your failed second entry long. I like going short there. Quick, easy scalp, and then, of course, it bounces again. But notice your double bottom, so it's a new low, first entry, and then you get another second entry, and it actually went higher and turned, went down. So you could have gone short one tick below that bar, but I just wait on this one, see if it closes. Bearish. If it does, I enter there on a second entry. And again, that's a really nice entry. It takes off again. Off it runs. You get a break of this short-term trend line here. You're kind of going sideways. You make a new low, and it reverses. And I don't see any reason to be looking for longs. Just let this correction play out. If it continues to make a trend continuing on outside of this trend line, the bigger trend line here, then you might consider it. But until then, I'm still looking for shorts, and I'm just waiting for it to come back to this key entry point. Comes back here. You test it here. You get a failed second. That would have been a nice place to maybe consider a short, but it's too, look at that, it's just a doji. It's a perfectly, so 1 bar trading range, a perfect doji. So then it pushes on lower, comes back, makes another lower high, and a bearish bar on a failed second entry long. Notice that high, first entry, second entry. That's the place to go short. And it does come back one more time here. This is your signal bar though here. And because you could look at this like a little double top up here. So you may consider going short under that one too, since it's right off the key entry point once again. So that's another one that you could consider. And as you can see, finally it takes off. But you do have a new high there, and then a first entry, and then a second entry. And if you drew this trend line off these lows and drug it up, it's turning down right off that. It is into that little double bottom, but this has been a pretty strong downtrend. With that being a trap, I'd probably take it. And it comes back and turns down right off the EMA, and look how everything's closing still inside that trend line. Now you've been away from the EMA a little while, still closing off the trend line, but that's just a kind of an up-down bar. That's too bullish. And that gets you into the 2 o'clock hour. So this was just kind of a different day. It's a strong downtrend, but there were, you know, it had these corrections all the way in here, and you had to just let them play out. And really, there's only a couple ways you can do this. Either if you find this trend line, when it comes back to it and it gives you a good setup, like a failed second entry long, reversal type pattern, take it. But the other thing is, draw your trend line, and when it's tried to go higher enough, like in here, this is kind of in no man. It's not back to the trend line. So you're kind of expecting it to come back, but if it makes a trap and a good setup, or continues to make lower highs and lower lows, just go ahead and take the trade. But the main thing is just make sure when you get corrections like this that they play out. Corrections like this was the one that came early on that was really kind of going to determine the day, and I wasn't sure if we were going to keep going higher or if we were going to turn back down. This was just a correction. It was hard to know for sure, but really I would look at all of this as one leg down. That's really all one move. And then you would have started your next leg right there, and you can see we made almost a perfect measured leg down. You got 2 legs now, but when it comes back, it just gets hung up at that trend line again. It continues to go on, but notice how it wasn't much further before it reversed and took off out of there. So this was just not an easy trend to find today. You'd probably been better off playing the shorter term stuff and drawing your support and resistance, especially if it's a downtrend. You want to be drawing your resistance across here like I've done all the way down kind of. I didn't have this one on there, but you can see that, or we get the double test right here and so forth. And so make sure you draw those on there, especially in the down, you know, the counter trend move. So anything to the upside would be considered counter trend, since this overall is a downtrend. But this sideways stuff here early on just made it a little bit more difficult to figure out. But you can see as the day went on, we picked up steam. And we did have a nice little correction right here too. But that's not uncommon in a downtrend, is to see some strong corrections, but in the end they just turn out to be corrections a lot of times. And that's what you got to be able to determine. Is it a correction, or are we changing direction? Like right here again, is it, or notice what's happening though, even though we're changing directions, there's still a lot of people looking to sell, and so a lot of those trades still would have worked to the downside, and that's the key. And somebody sent me an email saying he was looking to buy around lunchtime, and you know, in a downtrend, don't start trying to pick bottoms, because as you can see, even though we had a bottom right here, if you'd have just stayed to the downside, you still would have had some nice trades. And if you stayed to the downside pretty much all day, by the time we took off up here, you can see we're probably, something's changed now. But up until here, it still wasn't obvious this wasn't a correction. And if you just let the corrections play out and then go short, it was still easy sale, easy pickings all the way down. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, it's a whole lot easier to see this after the fact than it is in real time. But experience and time at the screen helps with a lot of that stuff. So just stay with it and continue to just, the main thing is don't be trying to pick bottoms, I guess is what I'm getting at there. Because if you do, you're gonna get burned. And it doesn't mean that you couldn't. I mean, look, there's several chances in there you could have bought if you just follow. I mean, even then, if you just followed the rules and waited for the reversal pattern. There's one right here that you could have gone long and made some money. There's one right in here that would have made some money. And it seemed like there was another one somewhere in here, but that's the two big corrections early on. You never really got one in here. If you'd have tried one here, you might have got burned. But you can see how steep that is versus this looks more like a normal correction. And even in here. But the key is just stay with the trend. It really is. So, I mean, if you sold any of these pullbacks to basically to the key entry points, the EMA, the support resistance, or the resistance, or the trend line today, you probably did okay. So the one problem you will have on a day like this is when you have a little correction like this, is just being able to wait till it's over, understanding when it's over. And this one we do get a break and a new high, and then a failed second entry long here, and you're making lower highs and lower lows. So that's what you got to wait on, if that makes sense. Let me back out and just show you that. Notice how you're going higher, and then finally you get a little close, couple of closes outside, then you move to a new high, you make a double top, and then you make that lower high, which is a failed second entry long, and look how it's all off of that trend line. And that's not the best signal bar. It's not a bad signal bar. It's only 3 or 4 ticks in that thing, I think. So, but it's more bearish than it is bullish. And if you go short there, you're fine. And then you get one more pullback to test that trend line again, and off it goes. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up for today. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. But I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.